Hello, and welcome to Family Credit Management's Personal Finance Made Easy workshop. What we're going to be doing today is working our way through Family Credit Management's workbook on understanding personal finance. But first thing I'd like to do is provide a special thank you to Bank of America, Citibank, Barclays, and State Farm for making this possible through their generous grants and contributions. Why is personal finance so important? It has really become more and more important, it seems to me, every single day, every single week, every single year. It's changing, in some ways becoming more complicated, but in every way being more important than it's ever been. And you think about all the different areas that personal finance affects us. Biggest one's going to be credit and credit reports. We're going to talk a lot about credit reports today because they're used for so many more things than I would have even dreamt they would have been 10 years ago. A job, an apartment, car insurance premiums. Your credit report has become such an integral component of your personal finance, yet one that we don't really understand as well as we should or we could. Also, the next thing is savings. How many times have I seen families absolutely devastated because they've had no choice but to go towards dangerous loans like payday loans, which I've seen at 12, 14, 2,000% interest rates. People unable to pay some of their basic necessities. People lose their jobs because they didn't plan, car broke down, and there's nothing they could do to get it repaired. So we're going to talk about all of these things, and the one factor that's going to go through today, and we have throughout this workbook, is how important it is to make your money do for you what you want to have it do. That's really the key to financial success. And how many times can people honestly say their money is doing for them what they truly want to have it do? And that is the ultimate goal of this workbook and today's class, is to have you figure out, one, what is it you want to do with your money? What's stopping you from getting there? And what steps can you take to make your money do that? What you want to have it do based on your needs, your desires, and not anyone else's. As I said, my name is Michael McAuliffe. I've been a credit counselor for 20 years now. I'm currently president of Family Credit Management, and Jeff Telling at our organization and I spent several months putting together the biggest tips that we've used with consumers over the years to create this book. I also took a lot of the lessons that I teach as a professor of personal finance and business at Morton College that I've used with my classes and my students and seen the things that they needed to know about, they wanted to understand, and incorporated that in this book as well. What we're going to discuss is everything from retirement planning, basic investing, savings, how you can go from living paycheck to paycheck to making changes to plan for your future. Too many times when I talk to people, personal finance, they're afraid of it. It's scary. They don't want to talk about it. They tell me, you don't understand it. I don't understand it. I can't do it. And I'm here to tell you that I've worked with college students, I've worked with senior citizens, I've worked with younger people, all different groups. You can't understand it. It's not that complicated. And we're going to take today and we're going to break it down into some basic ways. And by the time we're done, you can have a really good understanding of personal finance. And it's not going to be nearly as scary as my guess is many of you think it is today. First thing to do, if you don't have a copy of the workbook, you need to get one. We have online versions on our website because we're going to go through here and we're going to actually be writing in it and using it and referring back to it throughout this time. One of the first things we need to do is kind of a self-assessment. And if you want to take a look at page 8 and 9 in this book, we ask some basic questions. And this is to help you have an understanding of yourself, an understanding of where you're at, how you got there, why you're there, and what can and should be done differently. So I want you to take a look at those questions, and I want you to answer them honestly, because that's the key for this book. This book is just for you. And too many times I see people say one thing but do something different. Really, when we're working our way through this, every single answer needs to be honest answers, just for you, so you can start getting your plan together. So, if you're watching this, I want you to pause the video here in a minute, and I want you to answer these questions, and then we're going to come, as soon as you're done, go ahead and start it back up again, and we'll talk about what it all means. Well, I hope everyone really gave some honest answers to these questions. And a lot of people say, well, why do you ask some of these? And because they're really important. Why did you complete this book? Why are you going through this workshop right now? And understanding the reasons why is going to help you make some decisions, and some decisions later today might be kind of difficult. And if you really understand why you're doing this, because you're here for a reason. You're not doing this workbook, taking this class right now for no reason. You have goals in mind. One of the other questions we ask are, what are some of the obstacles that you're facing? Because when we're trying to meet our financial goals, we often have obstacles. And what are they? A lot of people don't realize them, and I'm going to encourage you to think about them and go back to them later and start adding on and rethinking about these. One of the obstacles that many people face is actually their friends. And some say, well, how can my friends be an obstacle to my financial success? Well, one of the reasons is we try to keep up with them. We may want to go out where they go. We may want to spend money where they spend. I've talked to countless families, individuals, young people who say they're spending $300, $400, $500, $600 a month going out with their friends. And they don't even want to. They're saying, you know what, I don't want to. I'd rather put it towards savings. I'd rather pay off some of my bills. I'd rather do this. I'd rather do that. But I can't because I go out with my friends. I don't want to tell them no. They're going to be mad at me. So that's an obstacle to meeting their financial goals. So really understanding what some of these questions are, why did you, what steps can you take to make some changes right off the bat are really important keys. Another reason to ask these questions is I always say, what lessons are we teaching our kids? I've had people come to me. I remember one family I met with, and I was talking to them, and I said, you know, you're spending $100 a month on satellite television. And they said, well, but you don't understand. We have kids. And I said to him, I said, well, what kind of lesson are you sending your kids? We've got bill collectors calling us. We can't pay our bills, but we've got Nick Jr. And there are ways around it. These are decisions that we're making. So understanding yourself and where you're at really, really are an important key. Now, the next thing I'm going to ask you to do is probably the most important part of this entire workshop. And that is taking some time right now and thinking about, where do you want to be financially 12 months from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? Because understanding what your goals are, understanding specifically where you want to be financially is really the cornerstone of meeting those goals, knowing what your goals are. Now, the ones you come up with right now may change. I want you to think about it, not just today, not just tonight, but for the next week, for the next month, and go back and adjust them and change them. Where do I want to be a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? So I'm going to ask everyone to go to page 12, setting goals, and write in here, what are your goals, as I said, the next 1, 3, and 5 years. Give it a little bit of thought. You're watching this, pause the video, come back after you get those goals written down. Well, I hope everyone came up with some good goals, and I'm not 100% sure there are even bad financial goals, but more importantly, I hope the goals were honest, because that's really the key. Too many times we come up with the goals that we think we should come up with. There's a lot of those. Having an emergency savings account, start saving for retirement, paying off debt, vacation, Christmas, new car. There's all sorts of goals you can come up with, and those are typical goals, which are probably pretty good goals, but they don't need to be your goals. Your goals need to be specifically, really, what do you want? Where is it you want to be financially? As I said, over the next 1, 3, and 5 years. Those are all great examples. But if they're your goals, if they're specific to you, and most importantly, if you really want them, we can help you get there. But that's really the key to all this. Too many times we say these are goals, we say things that we want, but when we really get down to it, it's not how it's working its way out. Often people say, you know, I'm not sure if I need to do all this because I don't have any money. I'm paycheck to paycheck, and I'm telling you, I cannot save any money. And I would challenge you, if you could cut $5 a day out of your spending, $5 a day. That's $1,800 a year. Now, $5 a day isn't very much money. $1,800 a year, now you're starting to talk about real money. And so many times I've had people come to me and say, I just can't do it. And we start looking through their spending plan. We used to call them budgets. People don't like budgets. Budgets they think are restrictive. Spending plans, making a plan for my spending, that sounds kind of fun. So spending plans are what we call them now. And we sit there creating your spending plan, and I'm looking through your actual expenses. How many times have I seen things that could be cut back? But $5 a day is $1,800 a year. Often, people are sitting here like we are today, and they're saying, you know what, I do want to make some of these changes. And they're going to create a spending plan, and they're going to say, you know what, I can do this. I'm going to do this. But then they get out in the real world, and what happens? Doesn't work, does it? And we had so many people I've had come back to me and say, I don't know what happened. I had my plan in place, I was going to start saving some money, and next thing I knew, I'm out spending at the store. So several things we came up with, some tools, because you have to understand yourself. That's one of the keys to all this. Understand yourself, your limitations, and what obstacles are in your way. For a lot of us, it's impulse spending. We don't know why we're spending. We don't plan to spend. We just start to spend. I go to the store. Plan is, you know what? I need a new pair of winter boots. So you go to buy the boots. Then what happens? Found a coat that matched it perfect. And then maybe a pair of gloves that will look really well with it too. And now, instead of spending $50 on a pair of boots, you've spent $250 on a whole winter ensemble, which is probably not what you're planning. And one day like that, a weekend, can really wreak havoc in your goals and your spending plan. So we've created a few things because we firmly believe that it's a battle. It's a battle every single day between you and retailers and merchants out there trying to figure out how to get your money out of your pocket and into their pocket. And they're pretty good at it. And too often, they win the battle. Why do they give us great big shopping carts at the store? Why do they want to put a cart in our hand at the store? Because if they do that, we're going to fill it up. And what we need to do is say, you know what? Hold on, I'm going to relax. I'm going to step back. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to fall for their tricks. Why is it that I've been doing this for a long time and $9.99 still seems a lot cheaper than $10? It's because it's a psychological warfare of us versus them. But by thinking about your goals, keeping your goals in mind, and what I would challenge everyone to do is what you wrote down for your goals. Take the most important one and take a photo, cut a picture out of a magazine, something that illustrates that goal, and put it everywhere that you spend money. For a lot of us, that could be on a computer monitor. Some of us, it could be just with our phone. Often it's when we're out at the stores. So I tell people, put it in your wallet, wrap it around your credit card, put it on your computer monitor. Put these pictures up everywhere to remind you. And we even created these credit and debit card sleeves where it says, stop, think, save. Because what we're telling people to do is, you know what, when you're out spending, stop. Okay. Stop, cool down for a minute, think about this, and perhaps make a deal with yourself. If I'm going out or I'm online and I'm not looking for something specific that I had planned on, I'm going to give myself a 48-hour cooling off period. No matter what a great deal it is, give yourself this 48-hour cooling off period. And then if you still want it, say, okay, then I'll go back and get it. So at least then, you're not going to have all of these things everywhere. One of the things I always challenge people to do is think about your house right now. And think if we could magically take money for every single item in your home, and I could put the dollars right next to it. How many times would you be able to go back and start collecting some more money? Things that you say, why did I buy this? Clothes that you didn't like, clothes you never wore, movies that weren't watched, food that was thrown out, knickknacks, music, electronics, so many things. How many of them were impulse buys? How many are things that, you know what, I'd really rather have that money back? And that's how money you can have, and you can start putting towards your savings, putting towards your goals. So now the next thing we need to do is start working through some more of the book. There's a few guides on here. If you take a look at page 14, we're going to start determining income. Now, too many people get wrapped around income. I don't make enough. Making the money is only half the battle. I would say that it's just as important, if not more important, how you spend. I've counseled families, individuals making over $100,000 a year that are in financial problems. Can anyone think of an athlete or an entertainer that made more money than people like us could ever dream about and went bankrupt? I think you probably come up with a lot of names. So clearly, income alone is not the key to financial success. There's other parts that are equally important, and that's going to be spending. So let's start taking a look at page 16 and 17. And you'll notice in this book, we've got two different sections, planned and actual expenses. What I want you to do first is go through and say, you know what? Here's what I think I should be spending. Here's what I want to spend on different amounts, on different items in my budget, in my spending plan. And if you're not sure where yours falls in, we actually put on page 15 our recommendations for what % of your income should be allocated towards typical expenses that families have. So we have the plan. The next section we're going to have is actual. So now I want you to go back as the month goes on and figure out what you actually spent on these things. And see, you know what changes, what adjustments can be made. So start, totaling those things up, get an understanding. And too many times, we actually don't look at this anymore. With electronic payments and money coming out of our checking account and expenses going right on our debit cards, we're not even looking to see how much are we spending on utilities? How much are we spending on movies? How much are we spending on lots of things? We're losing track of it. After that, we've got a net worth statement on page 22. And this net worth statement is going to allow you to see, where am I at? Sometimes people have a little bit more than they have. We're going to take your assets. Assets are everything that you have that's worth money. And the amount on there should be not what you paid, but what it'd be worth today. And liabilities is money that you owe. So take your assets, subtract your liabilities, and hopefully your assets are more than your liabilities. And if not, we're going to start talking about figuring out how to make it so next time you do this, it does come out that way. So take some time now, work on the spending plan. In the video, go ahead and pause the video. You get that all completed, and let's come back. Well, did everyone have fun creating their spending plan? My guess is probably not. But it is such an important component to making your goals, reaching them. And what I want you to do is really keep thinking about the items you had in your spending plan, and especially in the future when you're looking back and saying what were actual versus our planned, what changes can we make, making sure that that's all part that's thought about. Now, when you created the spending plan, you totaled it all up, you had one of two things happen to you. First thing, your income was greater than your expenses. That's the case, well done. Good job. Now, don't stop there. Doesn't mean you can't make it better, because let's keep working to make things better. Second thing is, income was not as much as your expenses. That means you had a negative on your budget. Now, I've seen that more often than I see the first. But what that means is, somewhere along the lines, either you're not spending where you think, or the worst thing, the more likely answer is you're spending with credit cards. You're adding to your debt every month. You're deficit spending. Now, that simply doesn't work for the long term. Unless you're the government. Somehow they seem to get away with it, but since we can't print money, you need to figure out how to stop some of these expenses, how to reduce some of these expenses, and that's what we're going to start thinking about next. One of the things that we did, and Family Credit Management has been working with families for about 20 years now, and we had all of our counselors get together not long ago and say, what are the typical advice, suggestions we give to families on their spending plans and changes they should make to their spending plans? And we came up with 100 things. So if you flip to the back of the book, we've got our 100 ways to save. And it's called Saving for Your Future. It's on page 76. What we've taken here is 100 suggestions that are not meant for people making just $20,000 a year. These are ideas that can help you whether or not your family brings in $20,000 a year or $120,000 a year. These suggestions are meant to really be suitable for most everyone. So what I challenge you to do, not today, tonight, this weekend, go through each one of these 100 items and check off, I will do it, I won't do it, I did it, or it doesn't apply. Then I want you to total it all up. And if you look here at the back, we've got a little total schedule for you. What did you score? And if you don't do well enough, we suggest to you, come on, you can do better than that. Go back and start over again. Now, these 100 ways to save are ideas that every family should go through, and not just once. In my household, we go through this at least once a year and see about changes we can make. Some of them are real easy and are in no way controversial, such as bid out your auto insurance premiums. Spend a few minutes, go online, call some insurance agents, and make sure you've got a best deal. I actually was able to do that with mine not long ago, and they reran it, and I ended up saving $300 a year. I'm still with the same company. I didn't have to make a change. All I had to do was take a little bit of time, and now I've got an extra $30 a month. Some are a little bit more controversial. Cancel cable TV. But still something that really should be considered, especially when you're doing it in light of your financial goals. So you have to ask yourself, what's more important to me? In economics, if I can go back to my college classes, we call it opportunity cost. Every dollar spent is a lost opportunity. So every time you spend a dollar, you're saying that this expenditure is more important to me than my goals. I'll never forget, I was doing a presentation to a big group, and we were talking about this, and one woman raised her hand and she said, you know what, I'm paycheck to paycheck. I don't have any extra money. And there's no way I can create this emergency savings account that you're saying is so important and that you want me to do. And I told her, I said, you know what, I couldn't really argue in this setting. I said, you know what, sometimes that happens. But then during the break I noticed she was outside smoking. So I couldn't help myself. When she came back in and sat down, I said to her, you know, ma'am, I just wanted to mention that I saw you were smoking during the break. I know you said you couldn't have a savings account. And she said, well, no one's going to tell me I can't smoke. That's one of the things I enjoy in life. And I told her, I'm not going to tell you you can't smoke. I'm not going to tell you you shouldn't smoke. But what you are saying is that smoking is more important to you than having an emergency savings account. If you're spending $5 a day on cigarettes, that's $1,800 a year. So a year from now, you could have almost $2,000. 5 years from now, almost $10,000. But you're making a decision that smoking is more important to you than having that savings account. So don't play games with yourself. Don't fool yourself. If you're saying, you know what, I can't meet these goals are too far away, it starts slow. It's like many good things. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and say, hey, I'm going to start implementing these changes and next week have $10,000 in savings. That's not how it works. But you start slow. You make some of these changes. And it's not about being restrictive. Too often we're talking about finance, we're thinking, oh, it's restrictive. I can't do this, I can't do that. Remember, when we started this, I said the key is making your money do for you what you want to have it do. So if you want those goals that you listed, that can happen. But you have to make some changes to make that happen. Now, it may be only saving $5 a day. It may be saving more than that. It may be cutting out cable TV. It may be doing this. It may be doing that. There's lots of things you can take. You have to look at your own individual family and see what changes can be made. As I said earlier, it's discretionary spending. Where is our money going and what's important to us and what are our goals? When we're looking at the budgets, or the spending plans, what we talk a lot about is wants versus needs. And sometimes they intersect with each other. So, we all need housing. We can't live outside, we need housing. But where do we live? How luxurious does our home need to be? Now we're starting to get into wants. We don't need to have a brand new car. We don't need to have designer clothes. So where do we start balancing our wants versus our needs versus the goals you outlined? Now remember, you came up with specifically what you wanted to do, what your goals were. The question is, are you willing to take the tough steps to make your goals a reality? I think you can. Now, I will say, one of the things that I've had has been the biggest problems for couples is when couples are trying to figure out their spending and their savings. I believe there's two kinds of people in the world. There's savers and there's spenders. Now, when two spenders get together, it's a bit of a financial nightmare. They're spending money, they're not saving money, but at least they understand each other. Two savers get together, well, I'm not really sure that ever happens because I haven't seen it, but my guess is it happens and they're out there staying home, saving money, happy, and they don't have to take workshops like mine, they don't have to take classes like mine, and they don't come into our company to talk with us. But when you get a saver and a spender together, well, now you tend to have the most problems because they don't understand each other. They've got different goals, different dreams, different desires, and it really can be a problem. So if you're a saver and a spender together or two spenders together, you really need to figure out what exact steps are you going to take in order to get this under control. Now, we created something that we call his, hers, and ours. This is a strategy that anyone in a relationship should strongly consider for their finances. First thing you do is go through the personal family spending plan. See what all of your expenses are for the month, what your income is, and how much you have left over for discretionary spending, and what your family goals are. And then how much you want to have to spend on discretionary expenses. One of the problems with money and relationships and couples is resentment can build. And if you have to call your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend and ask for permission because you want to go out to lunch at work or you want to get a new pair of shoes and the other person says no, or they say yes, but then they're resentful about it, they say no, you're resentful about it, and that's not a good strategy for financial success, that's not a good strategy for relationship success. So what we did is created his, hers, and ours. What we suggest you do, the first thing, is you create your household family spending plan. Look at all your income, look at your expenses, talk about the family's goals, and decide how much money do we want to have left over for discretionary spending. Discretionary spending is anything that's not necessary. It's not part of your family's household expenses. Because we all have different perspectives on where we should put our discretionary spending. I actually created this for my own household because my wife and I have very different beliefs for how we should spend money. My wife thinks that a new pair of shoes a week is a necessity. She also has no problem spending far more on shoes than I can ever understand. I believe that going out to eat pretty regularly, catching ball games pretty regularly, is a pretty good way to spend discretionary money. So my wife wants to buy herself a pair of bright red shoes, and I can either say, oh sure honey, and think, and have resentment start building, this is money that's supposed to go towards our goals. Or I can say, what are you, crazy? You don't need these shoes, you've already got 600 pairs of shoes. Do you really need more? And then she's gonna build resentment saying, well, you know what? I work, I contribute, why is it, he's telling me I can have something I want. He's probably gonna go out to lunch today at work. It's not a good strategy. So what we do is you figure out how much do you have left over in your discretionary spending each month. What's each person gonna have? In most cases, we recommend it's equal between the two. And that money is yours. So you have your hours account. That's where all of your paychecks go to. That's where all of your family expenses come out of. Everything that's agreed to, everything that's on your spending plan. Then you have your his account and your her account. His account, just mine, for whatever I want to spend it on. I don't have to ask anyone. No one else has access to it. I can do whatever I want with it. And she has hers. Now, how does this help? It helps tremendously because one of the things it provides to a person is perspective on their spending and control over their spending. So now I know I may have $100 every 2 weeks that I can do whatever I want. I can save that up. I can go ahead and spend it. But when I spend it, I've got to start thinking more. So it used to be, you have your joint checking account. Well, there's $3,000 in the account. So get home, say, you want to go out to dinner tonight? Sure, go out to dinner, spend $100. Is it that big of a deal? No. But now, I'll call my wife up. I'll say, so do you want to go to dinner tonight? And she's going to respond with, who's paying? So I have to say, well, how about we split it? And she'll say, no thanks, I was just going to make some pasta. So then I can decide, okay, am I just going to do that, or am I going to say, well, I'll pay? So I'll say, you know what, I'll pay. She's got her eye on some shoes. So we go out to eat, but now I'm going to really start thinking about it. Do I need to have something to drink, or is water just fine? So am I going to get an entree that I can also have to eat tomorrow for lunch or for dinner? Or start thinking about it a little bit more. My income hasn't changed. I'm not upset about my spending because I have control over it. I can make sure it meets my specific wants, my specific desires, my goals. I plan for next week, later in the week, or I can even save up. And for her, she's still able to buy things. She window shops more than she used to, but she also takes more time thinking about her purchases and makes sure she limits them to items that she really, truly wants. And that cuts out the impulse. But she's in control of her spending, I'm in control of my spending, and the family unit as a whole is meeting our goals. So that's the beautiful thing. Your income doesn't change, your perspective on spending changes. So his, hers, and ours is a strategy that I really think anyone who's in a couple relationship, you and your partner should really think about implementing something like this. So remember, understand yourself. Understand your limitations. What are your personal obstacles? I know I had one of my students, and we were talking about the need to create a spending plan and have an emergency savings account. He said, you know what? Here's a trick that I use. Every 2 weeks when I get paid, I go to the bank and I get $40 in quarters. I'm like, $40 in quarters? He said, yeah. And I put them at home and I put them under my bed, and that's my vacation money. And then once summer comes around, I take all my quarters to the bank, I cash them in, and that's what I use to go on spring break. And I said, you know what, that's not a bad idea. He said, because if I do it any other way, if I've got a savings account, I'll just transfer the money out of my savings account. But with this, I won't. He goes, there's no way I'm going out with my buddies and I'm going to spend money on pizza and pay for it with a roll of quarters. He said, that's not going to happen. So he figured out himself. And what strategies could he take? One of the important keys is having your savings as far away from you as possible. If you said, hey, I'm going to keep my savings account in my wallet, how many of us are going to be tempted to take money out of our wallet? If we say I have it in a savings account, but I've got a debit card attached to it, not good either. If you got it connected to your checking, you can go on your phone and transfer the money over instantaneously, probably not real good. Now, you could go online, set up an online savings account where it's going to take a couple days to transfer to your main checking. Don't have a debit card attached to it. All things that can be done and should be done and considered. But the key is understanding this, keeping your goals in mind, looking at your spending plan, understanding wants versus needs, understanding opportunity cost. Every time you go anywhere, if you go to a car wash and spend $5 to get your car washed, you are making a decision. You are saying that getting my car washed is more important to me than putting money towards my spending, towards my goals. All those things, those are decisions you're making. So I hope you spent some time. I hope you understood. I hope you really are going to stay focused. This is going to conclude part 1. We're going to come back with part 2. We're going to start talking about banking, investing, savings, what it means, and how to start doing it.